Today's scripture reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to him, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And again, he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So, leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
It's great to have you here today. My name is Brannen. I get the privilege of being lead pastor here. Grateful that you're here. We're continuing our trek through the Gospel of Matthew, and I did some calculations. We've been in this gospel for 3.5 years, and we're going to finish this off August 2nd. After 3.5 years, some of you are like, yeah. Hopefully it's been a good journey for you through one of the 4 accounts of Christ's life. Have you ever known something hard or difficult was coming? And the waiting was terrible. Maybe it was a big test if you're a student, or maybe if you're a working professional, it was a professional test. And kind of that waiting period before you took the test was incredibly difficult. Maybe it's a conversation you did not want to have, and you're just kind of like waiting, and you're like, "Oh, I hate this so much." Or maybe it's a consequence you deserved, and you know it's coming, but you haven't experienced it yet. Maybe it's a test result, and you're waiting for those results to come back, and that waiting period is uniquely difficult. Or maybe it's a dreaded phone call. I think for all of us, we've experienced moments where that waiting period is hard. I remember a small example of this in my childhood. We had this family doctor or pediatrician growing up, and he would do this thing that would always make me incredibly nervous before the examination. He would whistle in the halls. And so as a young child, I'm sitting up on the examination table, and you would hear that whistling happen. And you knew that the doctor was on the move somewhere. And you weren't exactly sure, like, if it was your room next or the room next to you. But when you heard that whistling, like, my stomach would drop. And I would become quite fearful. As a kid, that moment was actually worse than the actual examination or the shot. It was the waiting that was so hard. Now, that's a small example, but again, a familiar feeling to all of us. Sometimes the worst moment is the moment before the moment. And so what we're reading here today and looking at is the moment before the moment for Christ. This is the moment before he will be betrayed, arrested, mocked, beaten, nailed and hung on a cross, and die in the most humiliating of fashions before the entire world on a cross next to 2 criminals. This is the moment before the moment. And what happens in the garden is quite significant. So if you want to rightly understand what is Jesus actually about to go through, well, you have to journey through this, the moment before, the waiting, because it's revealing of what is happening and what is to come and what Jesus is wrestling with. And so Jesus takes his disciples to a familiar place, the Mount of Olives. Within this, there's a garden, the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus brings his three dearest disciples, Peter, James, and John. And these disciples kind of got unique access to Jesus' life and ministry. They were invited into some really transformative experiences with Christ. And this is one of those. He invites those three into the garden even further. And he's like, pray with me. And he goes off and begins to pray. Now, normally, we read that Jesus would go into this area and pray, and it would be just a moment of refreshment. He would commune with the Father, and he would come out of it stronger. And yet, when we read this encounter right here in this prayer, it doesn't seem refreshing. It actually seems like the opposite. And you get a glimpse into Jesus' soul as he says to his closest friends. Listen to this, verse 37. And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. Jesus is not simply nervous. He's not just simply concerned. Jesus is overwhelmed right now. And he's overwhelmed with sorrow and grief. And he's like, it's so great that it is drawing me to the grave right now at this moment. Some of you have experienced this level of sorrow. You're like, Lord, bring me home. The grief inside of me is so great right now that I feel like the grave is calling to me saying, come. This is where he is at. Now, Luke's account of this, so there's 4 accounts of Jesus' life. It kind of gives you indication to just how great the stress and the sorrow is. Luke 22, verse 44 says this about this moment. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. There was a physical response to the stress, the emotional and the physical stress that he is currently navigating. And we actually have documented cases, even in our modern day world, of when stress emotionally or physically are so overwhelming that you and I can actually begin to sweat out blood. And of course, it requires severe stress. In 2022, there was 60 reported cases of this happening. But it's only occurring in the most extreme of conditions. The most extreme emotional and physical stress. So Jesus is going through this right now. Not simply concerned, not simply nervous, he is overwhelmed. And this should surprise us, right? Because when you read the Gospels up before this, you're like, Jesus, you have been the picture of confidence, right? You've been the picture of anything but like sorrow and dread and agony. I think about the moment where there was a fierce storm and he's on a boat with his disciples and they're freaking out and they're like, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. And Jesus isn't only calm, Jesus is sleeping. He's on the boat and he's passed out during a fierce storm. And they wake him up and they're like, don't you care about us at all? And he stands up and he calms the storm. Jesus confronted demons. Jesus criticized the religious leaders to their face. Jesus touched the disease. Jesus has been a picture of calm confidence. And now he appears to be sorrowful, horrified, and in agony. Why? Why is there such a change in Jesus? And there's this one word that he keeps praying. The cup. The cup. The cup. Jesus hears the whistling down the hall. Jesus knows not only the physical pain that is about to occur, but the spiritual pain that is about to occur. Verse 39 says this, and going a little further, he fell on his face. Notice he doesn't just kneel. he's in such overwhelming agony that he falls down and he prays this, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." The change in Jesus from calm confidence to one that is sorrowful and in agony is this idea of the cup. And so what is he actually referring to? Well, you have to dig into the Old Testament just a bit. The Old Testament is full of this picture of what exactly the cup is and what Jesus is referring to. And it's always referring to God's righteous judgment against sin. It says this in Psalm 75, verse 8. "For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, with foaming wine well mixed. And he pours it out on all the wicked of the earth, and shall drain it down to the dregs." So it says that the Lord holds a cup. And this cup is a cup in which there's foaming wine. I mean, almost think about it like there's a volcano happening inside of this. And the Lord takes it and he pours it out on the wicked and wickedness. And they drink it down to the dregs, which literally means the sediment, the matter that's at the bottom of the wine. He pours out every last drop on the wicked. His righteous judgment against sin and wickedness, the Lord takes this cup and says, "You're going to drink of my fury and wrath," and he pours it out. Another example of this is in Isaiah 51, verse 17. He says, wake yourself. Stand up, O Jerusalem." He's talking to the Israelites and he's saying, wake up, spiritually, like wake up. "For you have drunk from the hand of the Lord, the cup of his wrath. You have drunk to the dregs, the bowl, the cup of staggering." Literally, the Lord's like, hey, you have been sinful, you have been rebellious, you've run from me, and so you've experienced me pouring out my wrath on you. And it didn't allow you to walk upright. You were staggered by my wrath. And if you know anything about the nation of Israel and their history, you know that really terrible things happened to them as other armies and other nations came and defeated them and conquered them and exiled them. He goes, wake up, wake up. You guys know how bad it's been. And that has been me pouring out my wrath upon your sin and upon your wickedness. And here's the ironic thing about all this. This is the cup that stands between Jesus being calm and confident and Jesus experiencing agony and sorrow. It's this cup. But why is he facing this cup? If there's anybody that should not be facing this cup, it should be Christ, because Jesus never sinned. Jesus wasn't evil. He perfectly obeyed the Father in every way, never once rebelling in word, deed, or thought. Jesus had no lust in him, had no pride in him, had no greed in him, no deceit, no rebellion. Jesus did not deserve this cup that we see in the Old Testament, the cup of God's righteous judgment against wickedness. And so why was this cup before him? We have to understand and we have to know. Well, because, friends, what he was doing was he was preparing to take our place. 1 Corinthians 5:21, Paul summarizes what exactly was happening here. And listen to this. For our sake, he made him, Jesus, to be sin, who knew no sin. He had no sin in him, but he became sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. The sinless one would bear our sin, guilt, and shame. The innocent one would literally stand in place of the guilty. and become the very thing that God hates, sin and rebellion. The sinless one, friends, was becoming sin. Jesus, who had from eternity past enjoyed a perfect, harmonious relationship with the Father, understood what this meant. I will not in this moment enjoy a perfect, harmonious relationship with the Father because I am becoming the very thing he hates, sin and rebellion. And there's going to be a separation that happens. And we see this on the cross where he goes, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me? Well, he left him because Jesus became sin. And the Father is pouring out his wrath on his Son. Now, this is not something we're like, I wanted to hear a really warm, fuzzy message today. This feels quite heavy. Friends, in order to have the good news, we must have the bad news first. So Jesus, his change happens not merely because of the nails, the mocking, the beating, but what he was actually becoming. And the Father was actually going to pour out his wrath upon his one and only Son. And in spite of this, the end of his prayer is so compelling. Let's revisit his prayer that he prayed not once, not twice, but 3 times here in the garden. He says, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. The willingness of Jesus to drink of this cup is profound. It's a cup of staggering. It's a cup of difficulty. It's a cup of God's wrath. And he goes, I will drink it. Not my will, Father, but your will. Jesus is not naive as to what is to come. Friends, he knows it fully and completely. He knows the betrayal. He knows the humiliation. He knows the physical pain and agony. He is also understanding the spiritual reality here and the wrath of God that awaits him. He's not naive. He's not reluctant either. It's not like he's kicking and screaming and you have this child that's being taken out of the toy store and it's like, let me stay. And the father's having to drag his child out. No, that's not the picture we have here. He goes, Father, if there's any other way, let it be, but not my will, your will. And so I will hold your hand to wherever this takes me. I will submit myself fully and completely to you. If this be the plan, I am willing. And he is not forced in any way. Matter of fact, if you read the Gospel of John, he goes, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down. And so most fundamentally and in the ultimate sense, Judas didn't take the life of Jesus. The soldiers and Pilate did not take the life of Christ. The religious leaders did not take the life of Christ. He isn't helpless here. No, he is willingly and knowingly saying, I am going to give my life. No one takes it from me. He is in complete control in this moment. And in his complete sovereignty and control, he goes, Father, your will, not my will. I submit to you. And why would Jesus endure such a cup? Why would he say, yes, Father, whatever you lead me to do, I will do. And I will drink this down to the very, very bottom. Why would he do this? Because there is yet another cup that is spoken of. And in Psalm 116:13, we read about this cup. It says, I will lift the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. In other words, there's a cup, this cup of salvation that I can drink of, and it's his cup. It bears his name. Jesus did all of this. He drank of this cup so that you and I can drink of this cup, the cup of salvation. He took what we deserved so that we can receive forgiveness and get what we do not deserve. God, being both good and just, must deal with sin. And you agree with this. Even though this is a hard message, a heavy message, we agree with this. When there is evilness and sin, it must be dealt with. God can't just go, oh, it's minor, it's insignificant. No, he is holy and he is righteous. He must deal with sin. If you were offended by someone, somebody committed a crime against you, you wouldn't go and, hey, judge, just dismiss it. It's insignificant. It doesn't even matter. There's somebody has to absorb the consequences of this. But to a greater scale, God, who is infinite, not us, who is perfectly holy, who deserves our complete loyalty and obedience. And we've sinned against him. Well, he can't just brush it to the side and say, not a big deal. Not a big deal. No, see, Jesus was saying, I'm willing to take the price that is needed and pay the price so that my people can lift this cup and that they can celebrate the salvation that I purchased for them. The heart of the gospel is not this. Be better, people. Do better. And then maybe God will love you and approve of you. And maybe one day when you breathe your final breath and then you stand before God, you're like, I was really good. That is not the gospel. The gospel is this. He took our place. He died for us, for our sake, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. I've told this story several times, but it's worth retelling. During World War II, there was a man named Ernest Gordon. We have a picture of him. He was a Scottish officer in the British Army, and he was also a prisoner of war in a brutal Japanese labor camp. He spent 3 years there. He was about 6'3", and there are records that indicate he weighed less than 100 pounds. And this was a brutal camp that he was a part of. And he tells a story. He would later on pen a book called Through the Valley of Kauai. And he would pen a book, and he told a story about a long and exhausting workday. He said the day kind of wrapped up as normal. The guards lined up all the prisoners, and then they counted the tools that were used. Now, these prisoners have been starved, they've been beaten, they've been worked beyond human strength, just frail. But then suddenly a guard begins to yell and to scream. He goes, hey, there's a shovel missing. Somebody has stolen the shovel. Who's done it? Step forward, own what you have done. What's really fascinating is none of the soldiers stepped forward. And so as you can imagine, the officer's rage grows. Somebody's stolen this shovel. Who has stolen this shovel? And he gets angrier and angrier. The rage becomes greater and greater. And then finally he goes, all right, fine. You will all die for this. And then one man stepped forward. He stepped forward and said, I did it. And the guard, in his rage, with savage force, comes over and beats the man to death in front of all of his fellow prisoners. And after it's over, to honor him, they kind of gather his body up and they carry him away. And the tools are actually recounted. And what they realize is they had miscounted the tools, and no shovel was missing. This is a faint picture, not a perfect picture, a faint picture of the gospel. An innocent man steps forward and takes the wrath on himself so that the others do not have to die. Now, in the gospel, We all stand in line, and we have all, because of sin, stolen the proverbial shovel, every single one of us. We're all guilty. And so when he goes, who's stolen the shovel? We should all step forward and go, me, me, me. We all deserve death. And yet Jesus, the only one who has never sinned, steps forward and goes, I'll take it. I'll pay the price for them. I will bear the wrath of the Father against sin, so that these can hold up the cup of salvation and celebrate what I have done. A faint picture of the gospel. And so what do we do with this? I want to end here. First, if you have not received the cup of salvation, today would you receive it? Here's the thing. Either you will trust Jesus and he bears your wrath for your sins, or you will bear your own sins before the Father. And for eternity, he will pour out his wrath. This is a hard truth, but a very real reality that is painted in the scriptures. I've said this before, salvation is not in you trying to be good enough, trying to earn it, trying to be moral enough so that one day you can stand before God and say, I was pretty good. No, before a holy, righteous God, we will say, I bear nothing but rags, filthy rags before you. I can't stand in your presence. I can't be in your presence. And really what we have done with Jesus is really the only thing that matters. Because on that day, if you have trusted Jesus, you will stand before the Father and you will hold up this cup, the cup of salvation, and say, this was freely handed to me, a free gift because of what your Son has done. He drank that so that I could drink this. Friends, if you have not trusted Christ, that would be the call to trust him today. And for the Christian, here's how I would encourage you. Rest in Jesus's finished work. See, sometimes we believe we're saved by grace, but to keep that grace around, I got to work really hard. And we slip back into like a morals mindset. I've got to earn it from the Lord. I've got to achieve it. I've got to stay in his good graces. That is still not the gospel. I know a number of Christians that are attempting to pay back God through their service and through their time. Please hear this. There are a number of issues with us trying to pay back the Lord for what he has already done. One is it becomes about you, not him. You paying back the debt. No. Friends, we can't pay it back. It's insurmountable. It's too great. Only one can bear the weight of our debt, and that is Jesus. Secondly, we act as though he didn't really forgive us. We're trying to earn something from him. It's like, yeah, I trust that you forgave us, but I'm not really certain of it. I'm not really sure of it. Friends, no, he has truly forgiven those that have drank the cup of salvation and trusted him. And then finally, even worse, trying to pay God back attempts to make you and I equal with the Lord. Like we could do something that only he can do. Friends, the only way to live is out of a deep love and gratitude for what Christ has done. And I'm not paying anything back. So when I serve the Lord, when I contribute my time, my talents, and my treasure, it's not coming out of, did I pay it today? Am I good? Did I pay the mortgage this month, Lord? No, it's like, Lord, you did what only you could do. You paid the debt. You drank of the cup. And now I get to drink of this cup. And it is love and gratitude that drives all that I do. If we have a heart for the Lord and serving him, may it come that we are standing confidently on his finished work, that we believe that when he said it is finished, it is actually finished. And I'm standing on that, and I'm believing that, and I'm trusting that, and I'm serving out of that. And so, friends, He says, come, all who are weary, who have heavy burdens, come to me. And why does he say come to me? Because he has done all the work necessary to save us and to free us and redeem us. Friends, my hope is that you are drinking of this cup, the cup of salvation. We'll respond in a couple ways. First, if you've never trusted the Lord, may this be the day you trust him. We'll have a prayer team up here. They would love to pray with you, walk you through that decision. You can also let us know by texting in Jesus, and we'll follow up with you and help give you just a direction to your life, a new direction to your life. Or maybe you want to get baptized. We're scheduling baptisms. You're like, I want to publicly identify with Christ. I want to let everybody know that I'm a follower of Jesus. Baptism doesn't save you. It just declares what is already true. And then finally, we take communion weekly here at Redemption because this is our hope. Our hope is on a body broken for us. Our hope is on blood that was shed for us. We drink of this cup because of what he has done. He drank of this cup. And we celebrate that. And so if you are a Christian and you're willing to repent of sin in your life, there's a willingness there to repent. Well, the act of communion is for us to re-center ourselves, remind ourselves of where our hope truly lies. And so I'm going to pray and we will respond. Father,